Warning, do not listen to this podcast if hearing about freedom and liberty is not legal for you in your community. And if so, you should immediately move to a hipper community.
Welcome to the Freedom Fiends Podcast, a weekly web lab where Michael W. Dean and Neema Vedadi cover the punk rockinist, hip-hopinist current events, as well as timeless universal truths about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because there's no such thing as half-free. The Freedom Fiends Podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's freedomfeens.com.
Freedom Fiends is proudly syndicated by Alterati.com and the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Welcome to the Vaporsmiths Freedom Hour with Freedom Fiends Michael W. Dean.
Broadcasting from my windowless bunker.
And Neema Vedadi.
Go Freedom Fiends!
Rolling. You ready for our weekly web lab, Michael W. Dean?
Yes. We got to change the outro now that we have two casts a week. So Neema Vedadi, how did that live cast go?
I thought the live show went well. Other than the fact that the callers weren't able to hear me. And my little brother Frank was listening. He noticed that was kind of not great either. Yeah, because I would start, for a response for something the caller said. But of course, they don't know I'm starting to talk, so they would just pause for a little bit and then start talking again. So other than that, I think the live show went really well. I mean, we kind of learned a hard lesson on how to wrap it up, when it came time for the hard breaks. But I think we had some good subjects, and it had a nice live feel. What do you think?
I think it went really well for a first cast. And we've solved that problem. We have a completely different call system, which will lead to a different call-in number. So check the podcast before you go to call us in. It's a Wyoming number now, which is good. Doesn't spell anything, though. I tried to get one that spells something with worms, but there was not one available. So, and you can also Skype in via username kittyfeet1.
Nice. Yeah, well, we were kind of stuck in the mind frame of that we had to use like a phone, like an actual phone as the device. And I think that's what was holding us back initially. You had tried to buy a bunch of equipment and do some soldering and jerry-rigging and, hook some inputs to the outputs and all sorts of stuff with the phone, and it just wasn't working. And then
the impedance didn't match. And then I looked into rack mount equipment, what Glenn Beck uses to get his phones, or Rush Limbaugh, or any of the lefty equivalents, like real radio people, and it's like $900 and up, and we don't have that.
Screw that, man, this is the future. What are we trying to retrofit a phone for? Who uses phones anymore? So,
and we kind of both at the same time came up with using Skype, a Skype phone number, and I've done a blog post. I'll link on how to do that if there's anyone out there who wants to be able to take live calls, and it works. But you don't need Skype to call in. You can call in from a phone number.
Because luckily Skype has a cheap service where you pay, what is it, like $18 for 3 months or something ridiculously cheap like that, and you get a real phone number. We just have people call in on it, and then we use Mumble and do the output to the other computer, and that way the caller can hear both of us, and it's just sounds great, easy to do, and really didn't cost anything except for the money we had to put up for the Skype line.
Yep, and I actually did end up using some of those cables and plugs that I bought for trying to do it the other way, so it was not a complete loss.
Okay, there you go.
And, and it's all good. The Sunday cast was fun. It was, I wasn't nervous of doing something live. I mean, I've done a lot of public speaking, and 20-some years ago I did some college radio, but, I'm not afraid of you fiends. I'm not shy.
I ain't afraid of no fiends.
Obviously. But what really, I was kind of nervous about the technology of what we had to do. I had to do so many things at once, more than Neema was doing on his end. So I ended up with a backache afterwards. I was like,
well, there was that point when Bad Quaker Ben Stone called in, and you were trying to microphone. Well, you were trying to duct tape, or I don't know what kind of tape you used, but you're taping the mic.
Yeah, I was trying to duct tape There's a picture of it on the website, on the blog post, and on michaelwdean.com, on the blog post I did about how to solve the problem, and on the Freedom Fiends archive for a show on freedomfiends.com. Oh, we are, by the way, if you call in, we're recording even when we're off air, like during the ads, and we need to remind people of that, but I'll say it now. If you call in, you are consenting to be recorded, broadcast, and recorded during the commercials when we're not on air, because we talk over them, and it's kind of the behind the fiends
scenes
snapshot.
Yeah, and I don't really know why you decided to do that, but I like it. Is there any insight you can put into the reasoning?
Did you listen to it?
Sound good, and you're like, I'm leaving that in.
It's the fact that Mumble just records whatever we're doing, and I'd stop it and start it during each commercial so it wouldn't crash the computer. But it just worked out. It sounded good. Yeah. I liked it.
Well, I think originally, you see, what it was is we wanted to leave the ads in because we weren't going to be like, we'll just cut the ads out. So, but of course, we've got business to take care of in between the breaks. We got to set up the caller and talk about what we're going to talk about next, and do a little wrap up of the last segment and say, hey, that was good, or hey, need to turn the mic up, or whatever.
It's kind of our really low budget version of Free Talk Live has a webcam in the studio, and I'm pretty sure it's on while they're doing commercials. I don't know if you can hear them, but you can see them during the commercials.
Yep. So it's just I don't know, nice little thing, little extra, kind of like a DVD extra for live radio, live podcasting. Yeah,
I like that. So I think we talked enough about how badass we are.
We can never talk enough about how badass we are.
How badass the Fiends can be by winning our contest, which only has one more week. It's to win a Fiends calendar, which the only people who have them are, Neema and I and our families. And to enter, you review us on iTunes, review the podcast, or review the Guns and Weed movie on Amazon. And it doesn't matter if it's a good or bad review, but you need to write us and tell us. Now, here's what's up. 4 people have reviewed us on iTunes in the past week, which is more than we usually get in a week. And I don't know if any of those are contest entries or not. So if you're listening and you reviewed us, or if you review us in the future for this contest, drop us an email at talkback@freedomfiends.com and let us know, because otherwise you're not entered into the contest.
You can't just review us, you got to tell us too. We're requiring a lot.
Yeah, and we said that before, but I didn't stress it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And other bit of Fiends news, the User's Manual episodes, which will continue coming out once a week through May, are coming out now Wednesday morning instead of Sunday, because I want to have more time to leave the live Fiends archive up each week. Okay.
Good deal.
I got an interesting email. Somebody wanted to buy an ad on the radio show, and it was a guy who sold right-wing posters. And I looked at his site, and he's like, and we have a libertarian section. And I looked at it, and we like the libertarian section, but most of the site was like, Reagan is great, war is great, abortion is bad.
Abraham Lincoln was a god.
Yeah, God, country, and patriotism. And I wrote him back and said, we'll do an ad for you if we can write the ad and say something like, blank, 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 blank has great libertarian posters and also right-wing ones that make perfect gifts for Grandpa.
Good gifts for the statist in your life. One-stop shopping for all.
He never wrote back. Perfect stocking sticker. Perfect stocking stuffers for that
perfect
statist in your
stuffers.
Life. Status stuffers. Be like a rag with a circle A for anarchy on it.
That's what Rick Santorum calls it when he has marital congress.
Status stuffers.
God, I hate that guy too.
Man.
I can't believe he got so much traction. Like, all throughout the early Republican debates, people were just like, who is this guy? Yeah.
Who is that guy? And why won't he go away and let Newt do
and everybody
his
was
job?
expecting him to drop out when, Huntsman and everybody else did. And nope, he stuck on and just decided to get more crazy and get all the old people votes, and I guess it was a good play on his part. He just annoys the crap out of me, and I think just about everybody else.
Obama probably secretly donated $1 billion to Santorum's war chest.
Yeah. Obama would love it if Rick Santorum was nominated. Like, I don't know, my cum rag could probably win in an election against Rick Santorum.
I'll bet if that's what it comes down to, I'll bet Obama will decriminalize weed while he's running, or at least promise to.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'd say he might promise to, but I would not believe him when he promised that.
And porn for all. Speaking of porn and Santorum wanting to block it, there's two bits of computer privacy, piracy, and crypto-anarchism news. One is, did you read this thing about, like, the Pirate Bay is planning on using drones for their servers?
I did. Well, they put a blog post up, and they said part of their new strategy is they were thinking about flying these drones up to international, I guess, airspace or waters or wherever it would be, and using those for their servers so that no state could try to take them down unless somebody sent their own drones or fighter jets after them, which would be tremendous cost.
Which they would. Yeah, and that's one. I don't think they're going to do it. I really don't think they're going to do that. I think that's just, here's what we can do.
I love that they came out and said that, though. I love that they're saying, well, you know, if you're going to use drones to do evil things, then hey, somebody out there who's a good freedom fighter can use drones for good. You know, I don't know if they will, but at least they're putting the idea out there into the ether.
Yeah, well, somebody was talking about doing freedom satellites recently, which would cost more than drones, but I just don't see it happening. I see it as socialist, libertarian, what's it called when you're a cocky libertarian and say, like, you know, kids should be able to have guns and crack.
Grandstanding.
Flash.
Machismo.
Macho socialist libertarian flash. That's what it is. But there's actually something going on that I've looked into that is other good news that's not fantasy, but it's reality, and it works. There's a new program, well, not new, but newly discussed program called Tribler, or Tribler, which I guess comes from the word tribe. I thought it came from Tribble, the Tribbles on Star Trek, the things that are born pregnant and multiply.
I don't know what that is,
fast.
But Tribbler sounds awesome.
They kind of look look like my cat Fuzzy without a face. You never seen The Trouble with Tribbles? It's the only 2-part Star Trek episode.
No, I haven't. Is it original Star Trek or Next Generation? Okay.
Yeah.
See,
70s,
I only ever really got into the Next
Trek.
Generation. I didn't watch the originals.
Yeah, the originals are beautifully cheesy in an interesting way. You should check them out more. But
Tribler.
So Tribler or Tribler, it's you can get it free. It's just at tribler.org. Tango
Nope,
India.
you missed a letter.
Romeo. I know the alphabet. I just can't remember.
Tango, Romeo, India, Bravo, Lima,
Bravo,
Echo, Romeo.
Echo.
Tribler.
Yeah. Tribler.org. A Tribble just ran across my desk. Fuzzy just ran
What the
across
hell
my
is it?
desk.
We've gone on for like 5 minutes trying to explain its name.
Okay, Tribler.
All right.
I'm going to call it Tribler. Actually, I think Tribler would have 2 B's, but okay, Tribler. It's a program like BitTorrent that has some distinct advantages to BitTorrent. The first one is it doesn't require an external tracker. It doesn't require a piratebay.org. It searches other torrents within connected networks. The downside of it is it searches slower, but once it finds what it's looking for, and there are little groups on there that aren't connected to a central website or database that you can find stuff with, once it connects with something, it downloads just as quickly as it would on BitTorrent if it had as many users. You can also get, like, the more you seed with other Tribler users, you get more of a like rating. So that allows you to work better and more effectively and find stuff and share stuff easier on there. The real upside of it, as far as I can see, I downloaded it and I seeded the Guns and Weed movie on it for a while, and I downloaded something that was Creative Commons. It was like, you know, some book from the 1500s, just to see how it worked downloading. The really cool thing about it is you can't see the IP addresses of everybody that's sharing.
Okay.
I mean, there might be a way to backwards engineer it so someone could tell, but I don't know. I think they made it so you can't. I mean, when you use BitTorrent or uTorrent or any of those programs, you know, you have a whole list of the IP addresses of everybody that's uploading and downloading that torrent that's connected to you. You don't have that.
So Tribler is not only more decentralized, but also provides more anonymity. Excellent.
Anonymity.
Does that anonymity benefit you if you're using a web service that slows you down for using torrents?
I don't know
because
about that.
I use Charter, and whenever I download a torrent, they like do something to my connection to where like I can't get on the internet anymore. The torrent will still work just fine and be fast, but anytime I try to open up any website, it'll tell me like the DNS server failed or something.
Oh, so you mean while you're using a torrent program, you can't you cannot surf the web?
I have to unitask. I can't multitask and do torrents.
What about on a different computer?
I was wondering, and I sort of did a test on this, not intentionally, but I was letting my computer do a torrent. My wife was trying to surf, and hers was getting the same errors. Not as many, like we were actually able to get on a site or two, but it would be really slow, and some sites, a lot of sites just wouldn't work. Like even Google. She tried to search Google, or tried to go to Google, and it said, the web address appears incorrect. And we're like, how can Google be incorrect?
I've never heard of that error. I've had the errors of it slows down my internet connectivity, but that's
a
just
lot of bandwidth,
a lot of bandwidth. But I've also had it happen a lot, especially since Optimum was bought out by Charter Communications.
Wait, so Optimum was bought out? Because at first it was Bresnan there when I was there, and then it was...
No, Bresnan was bought out by Optimum. That's what it was. Yeah, Optimum is a lot clunkier. I mean, Optimum, like, my TV doesn't work a couple hours a month, my phone doesn't work a couple hours a month, and my internet doesn't work a couple hours a month at different times.
At least it's not at the same time. That'd be awful.
And they throttle BitTorrent, which Bresnan did not do. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's interesting because it seems like they give me a preset number of hours or bandwidth for BitTorrent that doesn't affect other things at other times, but it's like I can upload and download on BitTorrent really fast at a high full speed for about 4 hours, and then I can't do that for a couple days. And then a couple days later I could do it for about 4 hours. So I'm not seeding the Guns and Weed movie anymore much. So someone else has to do it. Someone that lives in one of them there big cities with damn fast internets.
Or you could always just bypass it and actually buy it and support us. Blink, blink, blink.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Would you like to advertise your product or service to a large built-in audience of liberty-loving consumers who truly dig the free market? Freedom Fiends Live is now selling ad space. Slots are reasonably priced, but limited, so contact us today. Write the Fiends at talkback@freedomfiends.com or leave a message after the show at 765-27-FIENDS.
Somebody sent us a $100 donation, an American expat who says he's afraid to come back to America in some undisclosed nation. PayPal'd us $100. I was blown away. It's the biggest donation we've ever got. We're thankful, and we'd like more of them from other people.
And I can't blame him for not wanting to come back to the States if he's listening to us. We're talking about tyranny on a daily basis. I'm sure things might be pretty sweet in some island paradise somewhere.
I know. If we were government agents, we'd probably be working for some government agency that wants to prevent
immigration.
Immigration.
Although America. Government agencies, they don't want people to expatriate because they don't want to lose those tax cattle. And usually the people who have the money to expatriate and buy investments in other places have a lot of money that the government could tax and feed off of.
And they do want people to immigrate into this country because it's cheap labor and votes for the people in power.
Back to this Tribler thing, Tribler. I had a couple things to talk about on that. RT wrote up an article, and that's what you had sent me on this Tribler. And in it, there was another bit that I thought could have been bearing the lead or could be another story. Harry Reid, and I guess we knew this was going to happen, but there's a graph in there talking about how Harry Reid's quoted as saying most of the bad stuff, well, he doesn't call it bad stuff, but most of the stuff in SOPA and PIPA is going to be recycled into a new cybersecurity bill that's coming up. And I'm wondering...
Is that how he said it? Or did he say most of the good stuff?
He just said we're re-pushing that stuff into another bill. He didn't call it bad or good, but I'm sure he thinks it's good.
I predicted that, and Ian from Free Talk Live predicted that as soon as SOPA failed, was that it would come out in the form of national security.
I think we all sort of knew that, and that's generally how things work, is if something isn't politically expedient at a certain time, but the state still wants to do it, they just sort of put it on the back burner and then slip it through whenever the news cycle allows it for them.
The yearly defense authorization bill has become the dumping ground for incredibly tyrannical and statist poison pills that normally would kill things.
Yeah, because then if you don't vote for it, they say, oh, well, you hate the troops. Why do you hate the troops so much? Why do you want our sons and daughters to die? And all sorts of other ridiculousnesses.
Speaking of the troops and sons and daughters, my stepson is going off to basic training on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, Michael. Is he excited? Is he scared? Or what are his thoughts?
I said before I don't want to talk a whole lot about him in particular on here, but I will say that I turned him on to this movie, Heavy Metal in Baghdad, and had him watch it before he goes, which I think is great because it basically, I think if everybody in the world saw this movie, there would be a lot less support for war because, and I didn't even, the day before he goes, the week before he goes off to basic training, I wouldn't send him to see some like really anti-war movie. It's like the time to do that was years ago. You know, he's going.
He's already signed his life away.
Yeah, but I knew he'd like this movie because he likes heavy metal, and it's a good movie. It basically shows you that most of those people over there are just like you and me and just want to live their lives.
Yeah, it really does, and it's a really powerful movie to watch. The journalists go in there and, they're the real...
It's guys from Vice magazine, and they go in with a camera that fits in their hand that they smuggle in, and they have to sneak across the border. It's not CNN or Fox embedded journalism where they're wearing flak jackets and with the army. They're like wearing flak jackets and hiring like private security out of the phone book that didn't look all that competent either. It wasn't Blackwater. It was like some dudes with AKs.
Yeah, no, he was saying in the movie, these guys are teachers and, workers and things like that. And this is just a job they got because it pays more and the school's been bombed or, their workplace has been bombed.
And they don't tell their friends they do it.
Yeah.
They say they have some, office job and they leave for work every day and then come home and they've been out guarding people with flak jackets on and carrying automatic little battle rifles, and yeah,
and these are guys that they don't care. There was one point. Well, they kind of reminded me of.
Well, let's go back a minute.
Right.
Let's explain what the movie is. It's a documentary made by Vice magazine, who I really like, and I really like their movies. It's about the only heavy metal band in Iraq, and the band was active before Saddam, after Saddam, and then emigrated to Syria, or were refugees in Syria, and then I believe it was the producers of the film helped them get lawyers and stuff to emigrate to America. Now they all live in America. Yeah. They weren't very good as a band in the movie, but you could tell they had potential. But the reason they weren't very good was because their practice space was bombed and they couldn't get together to practice. They couldn't play gigs. They risked their lives to play gigs. People threatened them. People shot at them when they walked down the street. Actually, there was a scene where they're walking to their practice space carrying pistols, which I kind of liked because, you and I do that too. We have them in holsters, but I've never seen a band do that.
Yeah, they were just holding them by their hand, which, I would, if I were in Baghdad too, I probably would keep my pistol unholstered. I would just keep it in my hand just for that extra.
Although some American troop might shoot you then because they say you're pointing a gun,
Yeah. And that was the really horrible thing. And these guys didn't want to have anything to do with either side of the war, one way or the other. All they wanted to do was rock, man. They didn't care what was going on. They didn't know why the Americans were there.
Are you one of the 12% of Americans who still approves of our government? Then we need your help to force the other 88% into compliance. When you're not busy spying on your neighbors or squinting at everyone, tell anyone who will listen why more government is a good thing. You'll get a warm and fuzzy feeling demanding more taxes and arguing in favor of gun control while militarizing our police, because folks just aren't smart enough to handle real freedom.
That is so square. Check out the additional Freedom Fiends show, Freedom Fiends Live, every Sunday on the LRN.FM streaming feed or satellite radio.
Broadcasting live and worldwide from a windowless bunker inside a mountain near an undisclosed location in the rural Wild West of the occupied states of America.
Freedom Fiends Live expands on the Fiends' weekly Wednesday podcasts, but now we're kicking the hornet's nest live. Talk back to the backtalkers every Sunday from 5 to 7 p.m. East Coast time. From the makers of Guns and Weed, The Road to Freedom. Freedom Fiends Live. Call in soon before we get droned.
Hi, I'm Neema Vedadi from the Freedom Fiends Podcast, and I'm excited about Vaporsmith's electronic cigarettes. I dig the taste, and I dig the freedom to vape anywhere the nanny staters would wet their pants if I smoked.
Vaporsmiths.com is run by a liberty-loving entrepreneur, not some subsidized tax heater conglomerate.
I'm Michael Dean of the Freedom Fiends, and I love Vaporsmiths. I smoked 3 packs of tobacco cigarettes a day for decades, but now I'm only using Vaporsmiths. I love the flavors, I don't smell like smoke, and I save money, so I have more to spend on ammo and treats for my kitties.
Available in 4 strengths and 10 delicious flavors. Reds, classics, Turkish, menthol, strawberry, cherry, vanilla, coffee, minty mint, and cloves. Go to vaporsmiths.com. Use coupon code FreedomFiend to get 25% off your order. This is a limited time offer. Vaporsmiths at vaporsmiths.com. Since time began, tyrants have taken aim at personal liberties. Now there's a movie that aims back.
The government has no more right to tell us what to put in our bodies than they have to take our guns or tell us what books we can read.
6 drug police were eaten by bears while raiding a marijuana farm.
On your knees, you dirty hippie! Jesus. On your knees! What's the problem, officer?
Today, many cops who enforce pot laws do so only because it provides them with cushy jobs, good benefits, and a chance to push people around.
I was an undercover narcotics officer. The drug war is nothing but a farce.
The Second Amendment says you gotta keep you and your gat intact.
Guns and Weed, The Road to Freedom. A film by Michael W. Dean and Neema Vedadi.
DVD available now at gunsandweed.com or on Amazon. That's gunsandweed.com. Makes the perfect gift. Remember, that's gunsandweed.com.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out. LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Rolling. So yeah, man, heavy metal in Baghdad.
Yeah. They really reminded me of like the Iraqi death clock, like just the way they talked about things. They were just like normal guys. They just wanted to rock. Near the beginning of the movie, one of the guys asks him, you guys ever do any anti-Saddam songs? And the guy was like, we're not a politic band. We're not like System of a Down. I just don't give a fuck. And he was just saying, basically I just want to play metal. I don't care what's going on. And at some other point, the guy was like, we got troops on one side, terrorists on the other, and we're stuck in the middle. That's the democracy we got right now. So I'm like, F this democracy.
Well, he said they actually had to do a pro-Saddam song when under Saddam because right. to have a band and not be thrown in a dark cage or killed, you had to go to the Ministry of Culture or whatever and apply to be a band under Saddam. And they were like, well, let's hear your pro-Saddam song. And so they just made one up, and it was horrible, and they were totally tongue-in-cheek. But it was like, Saddam, 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 he is the bomb. Saddam, Saddam, we love Saddam.
Yeah. Rhyming Hussein with we're going to drive the Americans insane or something like that.
Yep. And then after Saddam, there was an interesting comment in there that I also remember someone saying it in that movie, Bulletproof Salesman. It must be a saying there because it's in two different movies, two different groups of people saying it. It was that under Saddam, it was Ali Baba, and now Ali Baba's gone, and the 40 thieves are still around. And he said that a lot of the violence that happens is not sectarian; it's just thieves running around or vigilantes who may be, religious, but. The guy said that the Sunni versus Shia thing is bullshit. He was a Sunni and his wife was a Shiite, and he said, it's not like the press tells you.
Yeah. It's just a free for all of violence in the streets, and I don't think that's because there was a lack of a government, because there is a government there. The American government is there trying to control everything. There's basically the state everywhere, if you consider the state violence and people thinking that they have a right to control people. There's a curfew at night. This band's, workspace or their practice space was bombed, and the place wasn't a military installation. It was offices. Like a shopping center. Yeah, offices and dental and medical stuff.
They were in the basement in this crappy little room, and it got leveled with a rocket. No one knows, whether it was a RPG or an American airstrike or what it was, but the building was leveled. All their equipment was ruined. And they had like one guitar each. It wasn't like they had backup. So their band was done at that point. And even before that, to practice, like, it was so hard to practice. I mean, two of the guys in the band were best friends for life since they were kids, lived, 2 miles apart, and hadn't seen each other in a year because it was too dangerous to drive over to the other guy's house.
Yeah, nobody wanted to be in the streets. At one point, the Western journalist was doing an interview with them, and it was like gunshots in the background, and it was getting on to be like, I guess, 5 in the afternoon, and the lead singer just wanted to leave. He was like, we got to go now. It's if you start to leave at around 5 or 6, that's about the latest you can stay out, because you got to get home before it gets dark
and the
people
danger,
start murdering people.
There were some moments I really liked in it. One was the second time the journalists come back, they bring a stack of American heavy metal CDs as gifts for the band, because it's hard to get good copies of music there. It's probably all like 10th generation cassettes or something. And there was an Iron Maiden CD, and it's from like 30 years ago. It's one I listened to as a kid, and it's this picture that has like their mascot Eddie, who's like a zombie corpse that's like 15 feet tall, walking on this landscape of like post-apocalyptic ruin and smoking and fires and war. And he holds it up. The singer holds it up, and he says, This is where we live. It's like on the American CD, it's fantasy, or the British CD, it's fantasy, but it's like, this is where we live right now,
Yeah.
Another thing that was really funny in the movie was they said that their fans won't headbang because the Iraqi people see it and it reminds them of the head moving in Jewish prayer.
Yeah. Of course, that was in the Saddam era. They could headbang after that, apparently, but they couldn't play any shows because there was bombs going on.
Yeah, they showed him playing one show in a period of like 4 years, and it was in a restaurant, like a nice restaurant. It
was like the cafe of a hotel.
In the afternoon, to like 30 or 40 people, and the electricity went out in the first 5 minutes, and then it came back on.
Yeah,
and they finished the show, and it was like the high point of that year or decade for them, that they got to get through a show playing for 30 people in a cafe.
Yeah. Of course, there was a happy ending. Eventually, they made it to Syria.
Well, in the film, there's a happy ending, but after the film, there's a happier ending. So go ahead with the film ending.
Well, in the film ending, they end up going to Syria one by one. It apparently was really tough for them to get out too. Like the highway from there to Syria, like they had to go through like Fallujah, and there was just instances of buses because they all take a bus, and apparently the bus guy halfway through it was like, "Okay, you guys are all going to pay me triple the price, or you're not going." And so they basically had to pony it up at that point, because what are you going to do? You're going to walk home in the middle of the desert with drones and bombs all around you? Yeah, you're not going to do that. Plus, other buses had gotten robbed by highwaymen and whoever, or just horrible stuff. By the time they get to Syria, they're excited, but they're kind of worried. And they're like, well, we got this one show. If there's a good turnout, then we'll keep going. If not, this is probably the last we'll ever play metal. But they play it, and it's great, and the crowd loves them. And then the Western journalists help them find a studio, and they start to record songs. Yeah, they said,
we found a studio of 2 Christian guys who chain smoked more than anyone they've ever met in the basement of a house. It was like Pro Tools and 2 mics and some pillows thrown up on the walls. But, that's...
Yeah, it was like the first version of Pro Tools from like 1998 or something.
Yeah, and this was 10 years later.
Yeah.
And, and they'd never recorded in a studio like separately, but they finally got together to do it. The Americans who made the movie took the recording of the 3 songs in the studio to America, got the band a record deal, and then after the movie, and then helped them emigrate to America, and they live in America now, and they're really good now because they can practice now. And there's a video on YouTube that I will link that's them backstage at a Metallica concert, meeting their idol, and James Hetfield walks off stage with his guitar, walks up to him, shakes the guitarist's hand, hands him his guitar as a gift, and writes "Welcome to America" on it. It's like, I almost cried. It was so beautiful.
Oh yeah, and just the guy's face. Oh, and they finally have long hair at that point.
Couldn't have long.
Throughout the documentary, they didn't have long hair, and then they finally got their hair all grown out. And the guy's face, his eyes just like light up so huge when he sees James Hetfield. It's just amazing.
It's a beautiful thing to watch, man. But what's the band's name?
Asakuda,
which is it's not Iraqi word. It's a Latin word.
It's black scorpion.
Yeah,
in
it's
Latin.
the scorpions that they have in their neighborhood, in their area. The Latin name for them.
Yeah. And these guys, they're just so real. I mean, they're like in their early to mid 20s, and they could be your buddy from college, or the dude down the street in the garage band, or
they reminded me of you.
I'm not Arab, but they reminded me of some cousins of mine. And I mean, people are just people. And there's one point where they are actually watching the footage up to that point that the Western journalist had shot, and it just. They're taken aback by it, even though that's them and they've lived it. When they see those images on the screen of their homes, and their neighborhoods in Baghdad just being destroyed, and they just
they've also raided the minibar at that point, and they're Muslim,
right. They're a little tipsy.
I don't think they've had a lot of experience drinking. It's interesting how someone who doesn't drink much, when they drink a bunch, how their personality changes. Because I noticed in that scene they weren't only melancholic and weepy. No, what I'm thinking of, not that scene, but is it after they record? Like, an interesting thing I noticed, and this is nothing about the movie, nothing about the band. I think it's a function of alcohol and why I don't drink alcohol. There's a subtle thing. They're talking about, like, yeah, we did this great thing. It's great. We finally recorded. I've never recorded. But they're not saying we once they're drunk. They're saying I. Like, I recorded this today. Uh-huh. I did this thing. I did this thing. The we disappears for somehow. And it's all I.
But I think it was interesting to me because I think it wasn't I at that point. It was each of their own struggle when they were watching that. It was all internal in themselves, what they were feeling as far as... And it seemed like the biggest question to them was why. Why is this happening? Why do I have to go to Syria where I'm not welcome and I'm treated like
refugee.
a third or fourth class citizen refugee?
Yeah.
Why? It doesn't make any sense to them. And it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I don't know why. And most people in America don't really know why we went to Iraq and bombed a bunch of stuff other than to say they did 9/11. So they're either ignorant of it or...
That was a guy from Saudi Arabia and some guys from Egypt? Mostly?
Yeah, mostly Saudi Arabia. I think 14 or 15 out of the 19 guys were Saudis.
Well, the whole reasons for 9/11 basically goes back to the U.S. occupation of Saudi Arabia over protecting oil interests after the Shah, in the 60s and 70s.
Was one of the stated reasons. The other big reason was, of course, the Israeli occupation of Palestine. But yeah, they did mention the fact that, American troops were in Saudi Arabia and were using Saudi Arabia as a base to attack Iraq in the first Gulf War.
Yeah, Iraq was on the other side of that at that time.
You can subscribe to Freedom Fiends via the RSS link on the top right of any page. It's orange and marked follow. Or you can subscribe via email at the subscribe by email link at the top of the right sidebar on any page. It's a little bit below the search field. You'll need to respond to a one-time confirmation email, but after that, you will only receive an email each time a new episode posts. The Freedom Fiends respect your privacy. We will not spam you and will not sell, rent, or share your email address. And you are free to unsubscribe at any time.
There was one thing, too. I kind of got an inkling of how people become suicide bombers watching this movie. I mean, not that these guys would have done that, but their town is destroyed, their lives are destroyed. The only thing they care about, their music, their practice space is destroyed. And one of them said something like, I just don't know what to do. I'm so angry. I don't know what to do.
I think he literally said, I'm so angry I could just explode.
Yeah, that was the line.
I mean, I don't think there was a pun intended.
And he did not mean, I do not get the impression he meant, I want to strap on a suicide vest. I think he was just...
not at all.
And these guys had a little more options probably than most people because they had, something they could take somewhere else. And
yeah, they had talent and passion and...
Well,
there was also another point when the same guy, who I think was the bassist, was saying... the way you get through it, through living in an area like that, in a war zone, is even if you're a civilian, you just understand that you could die any moment, and that any moment above ground is a good moment, and you have to you have to block the fear of death out of your mind. He said, I just don't care if I die. I've made my peace with it. If I get blown up or shot, that's just what happens.
I really think that people should watch this movie even if they hate heavy metal. There's not even that much music in it because they don't get to play much music in it. It's a really good documentary in the sense of, like I always say, a good documentary touches the basic human common emotion of everybody and the things we have in common that make us human. And one of my favorite documentaries is about football, about a football player, and I hate football. So, even if you don't like heavy metal music, check out Heavy Metal in Baghdad. I'll link the first chapter of it. It's in 4 or 5 chunks on YouTube, and they'll play, when you finish one, you'll get the other one as a related video.
Yeah. I think there's like 9 parts, and you have to, the related video will always be in the top left of the related videos.
In the video or over on the list on the right?
Yeah, in the video. How it comes up with the little montage or mosaic of all the videos? It's always in the top left will be the next
And,
segment.
It really made me think about how, these guys, you think you've struggled for your art, anybody out there? These guys have struggled for their art more than anybody in modern times that I can imagine. I mean, I thought I was, suffering and really kicking against the pricks back when I was playing in a punk band in the 80s, and occasionally a redneck would throw a beer bottle at you walking down the street for looking punk rock afterwards. But, we never got shot at. We never got our practice place blown up. We never had the Ministry of Culture, threatening to kill us if we didn't sing pro-government songs. And I was thinking that through the movie, and then the filmmaker said that. He's like, I think about other bands back home in my neighborhood in Brooklyn and, like, how sheltered and spoiled they are. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I felt the same way. I just felt so grateful for where I'm at and how I get to do my art, and I almost felt bad. In my songs, I'm rapping about the government and I can't believe they take some of my money and won't let me buy pot at Walmart, but at least I'm not getting bombed.
Yeah, which brought up an interesting, almost conundrum for me, but I was able to justify it. I mean, a lot of people would see this movie. First of all, some people would see this movie and go, damn Iraqis, they should be killed. But, anybody that's not like that, even if they're a patriot, would probably see this movie and say, yep, aren't you glad to live in America? And in the end, they got to come to America and be free. And freedom has degrees. And I think that sometimes people who are outright anarchists, kind of libertarians, can kind of live in a fantasy world where they're like, all government is horrible. But, and I'm not saying the government's great here. I think it's just at a different stage. But it's like, we don't get shot in the head for saying what we believe. Like doing this podcast, if we were Iraqis or in most of the Middle East or in most of the South America or a lot of Africa, doing this...
We could get thrown in jail. We could be thrown literally in a cage.
They would come to our house, they'd kick in the door or knock on the door and come in with men with guns. They'd steal all our equipment. They'd throw us in a cage. They might just kill us on the spot and say we resisted, or they might just kill us on the spot and say that's the sentence in our country and that's the trial in our country. And if we got out, we'd never get the equipment back. We'd never be able to do it again, So I'm not like a proud American or a patriot or even feel an affinity to America, but I will say I'm glad that I live in a place where I won't be shot yet for saying what I think. They're working on it.
But at the same time, they're working on it. And of course, that's the reason why we shouldn't feel like, we should just stop talking so bad about our government and the fact that we have, our freedoms infringed here. Because I think the idea is no matter where you're at, you always need to be fighting for your freedom.
These guys were fighting for their freedom. They said we're not a political band. Their lyrics were not political, but they were absolutely a political band just by existing.
Yes, exactly. The act of being a heavy metal band where they were at was a political act in and of itself, not intentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the thing, too, that I feel is, politics. Like, I don't consider myself political. Yeah, we talk about politicians and things in our casts and in our music, but I don't feel like I'm a political pundit or like this is a political podcast. I think it's anti-political. We're trying to expose politics because all politics is people fighting over the stolen goods. Like what's the saying? It's an election is an advanced auction of stolen goods. And so we're not trying to fight for one politician to win over another or one political philosophy to win over the other. We're anti-political. We're fighting for politics to stop.
Yeah. Worms.
Worms.
So, everyone should go see Heavy Metal in Baghdad. It's on Netflix and it's on YouTube.
Yes, please do. Please do. I don't watch most of the movies Michael advises me to watch.
I'm happy you watched it.
I definitely co-sign
And if
this
people
one.
if people watch it and want to call in on Sunday, they can call in and we'll talk about it on there too some more.
Oh yeah, that'll be good. See, I think the key is if I wake up early and you told me to watch it the night before, then I'll watch it. Because then I don't have to convince my wife to watch it, because she doesn't really like to watch movies. So this morning I woke up like at 7:30 and I couldn't go back to sleep, and I was like, you know what? I'll watch Heavy Metal in the morning. And I did, and it was amazing.
So speaking of people of Middle Eastern derivation making important musical statements, this rapper, Low Key, man, what do you think of him?
Loki, he's awesome. I mean, I've only heard his one verse on that song that I posted on my Facebook. What was it called? Abomination 2 or something like that. You'll post it, I imagine, in the show notes, I hope. And great video, great song, just to hear all these rappers just take Obama to tasks. And there's one guy who has a line, I forget what precedes it, but he's basically saying, I'm not going to drink Obama's Kool-Aid because my mind never closes like Guantanamo Bay. And he rhymed it with something else better, but really great work. And I just really love to see hip-hop culture turning the cold shoulder to Obama. I was really worried
that they'd all be dick riding Obama.
Yeah. Well, you remember, and I'm really glad that the Boondocks had that first episode, and I feel like that really made it okay to be in hip-hop culture, in black culture, and still say, F this guy, man, he's a Fed. He's ruining everything, just like any other Fed would. Yep. I mean, he's just King Fedgoon. If you're into, being free, no matter what color you are, you have to disavow this guy. And I'm really glad that it's still happening. And, also in the song, they sample Lupe Fiasco, who also has done a lot of work on this, where he says, that he'd never vote for Obama. And I'm really glad for that.
Yep. Loki is British, but of Arab descent. I'm not sure what country.
I thought he was Iraqi.
Is he?
That's what I thought, but maybe
I can't open a computer. I'm recording on it. But he was actually detained for 9 hours at an Israel airport for being him.
Yep, he is. His name is Kareem Dennis. He's of Iraqi Arab descent.
There you go. He should do a record with Asara Rakuda. How do you say it?
Asada Queda? I don't know, man.
That'd be a good record.
I don't know how to pronounce words through an Iraqi accent, Latin words with an Iraqi accent.
I don't know if they.
I'm not even going to try it.
So, do you hear about Angel Rash, R-A-I-C-H, right? Rish, cancer patient kicked out of hospital for using medical marijuana?
Yeah, I heard it. I read the article. It was actually a great piece by the local news station there. Just a horrible situation. This person... Yeah, in San Francisco, and apparently this person has been an activist, and even
she had a landmark court case against the feds for medical marijuana.
Right. Basically, I think it was trying to get the precedent that states could legally make laws to where you could use medical marijuana. Of course, the Supreme Court said, no, federal government's supreme, which is no surprise because the Supreme Court is part of the federal government.
The burrito Supreme Court.
The burrito Supreme Court.
And that's not a reference to there's a Hispanic on it now. It was just burrito.
Oh, I thought it was a reference to Idiocracy.
There you go.
Beef Supreme.
Yeah, Beef Supreme.
But at any rate, she was using what are those things called? Not where you smoke it,
Vape
but where
it.
you
Yeah.
vaporize. She was using a vaporizer on her marijuana while she was in her hospital bed. And a doctor came by and said, you can't do that.
And she's dying.
like,
She's dying of cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, and her doctor apparently had told her and wrote it up officially that she needs to have marijuana every 2 hours. And so she was just following doctor's orders, and the person in the hospital said, "Nuh-uh," even though she's in a hospital where she's supposed to be treated medically. And he got the security guards and the cops in there, and they basically kicked her out, didn't they?
Interesting thing, that same hospital, UC Parnassus in San Francisco, I have been paid by the government to be in that hospital smoking marijuana laced with cocaine in that same building.
Wow.
As part of a study.
Huh. What kind of study was that? Let's have a bunch of fun
It was
study?
not fun, man. It was like...
No?
Yeah. I did one where I smoked cocaine on medical marijuana, which came in... here, let's save the file, then I'll come back and talk about this.
All right. More drugs on the other end of this break.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's FreedomFeens.com.
Rolling. Yeah, so I was in UC Parnassus Medical Center in San Francisco doing a paid drug study, doing 2 or 3 of them actually over a period of about a year. 1988. And I never liked marijuana or cocaine, and I was doing these studies for heroin money.
That's hilarious.
But even the study was so intrusive that the way they paid you was, it was once a week, 8-hour day for 4 weeks, and they paid you $100 cash a day that at the end of the day. But they had so many people drop out of the study before it was completed that on the last one, the 4th one, they'd pay you for 2 days. They'd pay you $200 to finish it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
As sort of a carrot instead of a stick to keep you on?
Yeah. Because basically what they did was, okay, the marijuana one, they had marijuana, federally produced marijuana cigarettes, which come in a generic-looking cigarette pack that has some printing on it that says 20 USDA marijuana cigarettes for research purposes only. On the other side of it, there is the tax stamp. Remember, we said that marijuana was...
the one that they never gave out.
Yes.
It actually exists.
Yeah, for them.
Huh.
And...
So, what is Fed pot like? What is it like smoking a Fed joint? Is it crap like everything else the Feds do?
Well... This was 86, which is before marijuana got really, really strong, before everyone was doing hydroponics.
When everything was dirtweed?
When it was mostly Mexican dirtweed, yeah. It was average strength. It was kind of harsh, kind of hempy, kind of ropey, but it got you high, but it was, of average strength for the time. I think it was of a uniform strength for the time. I think they even, the doctor told me that they grow it in a way to try to produce the exact same amount of THC in each joint. And then they had dipped these in cocaine mixed with alcohol or something and let them dry. And that was one study. Another study I did was where they shot me up with cocaine, which is kind of horribly mind-blowing. It's kind of like, for about 20 minutes you're ecstatic and want to stick things up your butt, and then for about 24 hours you want to kill yourself. But both of the studies consisted of, they put an EKG thing on my heart and EEG helmet on my head, all of the little electrodes on your head, and they have to use a little stick to push the goo into your head through each of the 20 or so things on it to get it to make contact. Yikes. So it's really painful and it's really itchy, and you have to leave it on all day, and you have to do all these computer eye coordination tests. I mean, it'd be basically like if someone said, okay, get high. Okay, now we're going to put you through a rigorous battery of really intrusive tests as you're coming down.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. I can't imagine anything I'd want to do less when high than be involved in a federal government study. That sounds awful.
Yep.
And I guess they didn't even pay you that well, but
Well, that's pretty good pay for a junkie, $100 for getting high.
yeah, it's true.
Yep. And you actually had to be sober to do it, and you couldn't smoke cigarette. You couldn't smoke the whole time.
Oh.
So it's also 8 hours of jonesing for a cigarette.
Yikes.
And one day I showed up, and they gave me a breathalyzer and sent me home because I was drunk from the night before.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So what were they studying? Did they ever tell you? Did you ever get to look up the results of whatever the hell they were studying?
No, actually, I think, yeah, because I heard recently about some results from some 25-year study in San Francisco that mentioned that hospital. I don't remember what the results were. I mean, I think there was something like people like cocaine and marijuana, but they're dangerous. I don't know. It's a dangerous combination.
Yeah.
I also thought it was really, there was a battery of questions, too, and there were no questions about sex drive, which I thought's really bizarre in a cocaine study, because cocaine just makes me want to stick things up my butt and
and
play with my limp weenus.
Wow.
Stimulants.
That sounds like a fun song to make.
Well, stimulants tend to make your weenus limp and make you really horny. Speed and coke.
Yeah.
Especially speed. But anyway, moving on to more pleasant thoughts. Not really, but U.S. soldiers were asked to disarm during a speech by Leon Panetta, the American Defense Secretary, as a sign of growing concern over spates of seemingly random violence in Afghanistan. First of all, I'm thinking seemingly random. You mean us being over there?
Right.
The U.S. being over there?
Yeah, give a bunch of people guns and tell them to go kill people for no reason. I think you guys set up the random acts of violence. That sounds like your fault.
Yeah, it is their fault. But it's also interesting. It's like, so the Army is now a gun-free zone?
Right, and apparently this is the first time that's happened, at least in recent memory, where they asked the troops in the Middle East to disarm before seeing one of the high muckety-mucks. And of course, I'm sure Leon Panetta was just there to tell them, hey, you guys aren't getting out of this. Yeah, we're gonna still be here. And CNN was on the other day, sort of doing damage control for all this horribleness, and had a spat of different generals and wonks and military apologists, and all the headlines. I wasn't listening, I was just sitting at the Crapplebees watching whatever was on the screen, and all the headlines were. Study shows Afghanistan war going well. Goals being met. Generals say they're going to stay the course. And I was thinking...
Studies. How many Afghanis did they interview in those studies?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was thinking, first of all, what war? I mean, who the hell are we fighting? Does anybody know? Do any of those journalists know what the mission is? I mean, it seems to me the mission is just be there. We're just occupying it. And obviously that's not working. Things aren't going well. I mean... all the people in Afghanistan want is for us to leave.
I saw a cartoon. It was called Afghan War Exit Strategy, and it showed like a map, and it was a door that said exit on the border of Afghanistan leading into Iran.
Yeah. That kind of joke is made quite a lot, actually. I remember during the 2008 presidential elections, there's a place on UT campus, or right off of UT campus on the drag, called Brave New Books. I used to go there and do open mic nights, and it was right next to where my college job at Domino's was, too, so I just always hang out in there before work. And they had a few posters that were like, of course Hillary and Barack want the troops out of Iraq, because they want more troops to go into Iran. So
yeah, that's
sort of been a meme for a while.
Well... here's a headline that's sort of related that, I don't know, this just writes itself. Bad smell blanketing D.C. metro area.
Yeah, I read that. That was pretty hilarious, and I think they were trying to blame it on the trees, but I think the state just ran out of stolen money to buy their deodorant with.
I think it's just the smell of Congress in session working. Congress. The smell of the sausage making.
Right. Well, isn't it supposed to be like some fetid swamp that they built it on?
Yeah, DC is pretty much a drained swamp.
Yeah.
I lived in DC for Well, I lived in the D.C. area for about a year.
That's right. That's right. You were doing punk music over there.
Yeah, I lived in Arlington, Virginia in a house, and then before that I lived in an abandoned building in D.C. and worked in D.C. in Georgetown for about 4 months, and then lived in Arlington right across the river and commuted to D.C. to work for about a year, and then moved down to Charlottesville for 2.5 years, and then moved to California.
What was it like living in Babylon, the belly of the beast in D.C.?
Well, then I moved back in like 1988 or 87, the summer of crack, the summer that the mayor got arrested for crack and said, "Bitch, set me up" on camera.
Really?
And then became mayor again later, or had some office later. But I was living in a crack neighborhood in Adams Morgan that summer. That was quite something. What was it like? I don't know. It was my first really living away from home. I mean, I'd lived at the church farm school, but that was in a supervised, it was my first kind of like, I basically ran away from home when I was 20. My friend was going back to D.C. from Chautauqua, and I asked him if I could come, and he said, yeah. And I told my mother, I'm moving to D.C. tomorrow. I love you. Goodbye. And left with a backpack. It was interesting. I mean, I was kind of homeless by choice. I didn't have enough money to get an apartment at first, so I had a job where I wore a tie and made health food sandwiches for yuppies. And for they had 2 stores and I worked in both of them. One was in Georgetown. The other was on K Street, which is I was serving sandwiches to
lobbyists.
To lobbyists all day long. And they're really snide and really uppity and,
they always think what they're doing is good. I met a lobbyist once, and I asked him what he did, and he says, I make sure laws get passed the right way, or something like that. Like, I make sure legislation is right.
Well, I can see why lobbyists think they're doing the right thing, because it's sort of a weird perversion. The existence of lobbyists is sort of a weird perversion of a provision of the First Amendment of the Constitution, of the, the right, is it the right to redress your government, or the right to air your grievances to your government. I forget the wording of it, but it's part of free speech. And, it's what makes it legal to write a bitchy letter to your congressman. Although if you write a bitchy letter to your congressman, he's probably going to pass it on to some Fed goon who's going to investigate you, but it's still legal technically. But at some point, corporations realized, and special interest groups realized, a bunch of people writing letters doesn't get this done, so we're going to form organizations that have a person that goes and pressures and bribes and coerces lobbyists or representatives into passing laws in favor of them.
FreedomFeens.com, 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 Freedom Feens. Freedom Feens. FreedomFeens.com, 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 Freedom Feens. Freedom Feens. FreedomFeens.com, 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 Freedom Feens. Freedom Feens. Freedom Feens. Freedom Feens.
Most legislation in America, probably in the world, but in America for sure, is written by corporations. They bring the whole bill in and hand it to the representative, and the representative brings it to Congress.
Yeah, and they might tweak it here and there to meet their own needs, but that seems to be the source code, so to speak, for everything, is stuff written by lobbyists and people who are paid by special interests to basically make sure laws get written in the way the special interests want them to be.
Yeah. So square.
It is so square, and I mean, it's really, that's what our government boils down to, is just a giant auction of goods to the best paid lobbyists, whoever can fight the hardest and impress the congressman enough to actually push their ideas through. And meanwhile, we're just regular people are just trying to survive. And why should we be subject to all of this?
Okay, everything you just said is totally true, but it could have easily have come out of the mouth of an Occupy Wall Street person or a Tea Party Republican. Now, the difference is your solution. Tell me what your solution is.
Well, the solution is to drain the swamp again. I mean, if we didn't have this whole system set up where there's what we call a state, which is basically the belief that these men are right when they steal our money and then decide to hand it out to whoever the highest bidder is, basically. See, the Tea Party person would say, well, we need more...
lobbyists for us.
Right. We basically need lobbyists who are going to fight for schools and Christianity.
And for Christianity?
For whatever they want.
Against Christianity. Wait, Tea Party. Okay, I'm thinking of Occupy Wall Street. Right.
Right. No, the Occupy Wall Street folks
they want more laws.
Yeah, exactly. They say, we need more laws and regulations to keep this from happening.
The Tea Party people would want that too. But yeah, the problem is government.
Right. See, and that's the main difference, is the Tea Party or the Occupy folks just think that they can tweak the system or change some laws or vote the right people in. They never realize that the root is the government itself or the state itself. The state is the weapon that's pointed at us. And all Occupy or the Tea Partiers really want to do is change the bullets. Whereas an anarchist or libertarian would say, how about we just stop letting these people point guns at us?
Well, my statement on the Occupy Wall Street thing, I have a few comments on it. I've said them before. I'll say them again in case there's any new listeners. They are right to be angry, but they're yelling at the wrong thing. They're yelling at, the government, and specifically the Federal Reserve, which funds the government with monopoly money. The government is the monster. Wall Street is the shadow of the monster. They shouldn't. Occupy Wall Street should be occupying Congress and the Federal Reserve, and not that would make a difference either. I mean, really, basically, the Occupy Wall Street people, they have a lot of different opinions, and they're not homogenous, but a kind of general overall feeling of it seems to be, we need more government regulation. We need the government to point its guns in the right direction and get this changed. But what they don't realize is, the government in its purest form is that cop at that Occupy Wall Street thing pepper spraying all those unarmed, compliant, nonviolent kids in the face. That is the government.
Yep, exactly.
That's not a bad part of the government that needs to be fixed. That is the government.
Yep. That is the essence of the state, is the violence directed in the direction of people.
Yeah.
And until you get rid of that, you won't. The least of our worries is rich people taking private jets. The biggest of our worries is people stealing our money in order to pay for their own private jets. I'd rather get rid of the stealing than care about what the stolen money is being used for. I like how you call the Fed money monopoly money. I've heard that used before, but I was just thinking, it's a double entendre, because not only is it monopoly money in the sense that it's just paper, fake, like
they have a monopoly, but they have a monopoly.
Exactly.
On money and on
they have
everything.
a monopoly on money creation, yeah.
And on everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's one. Condition of pimp's parole. You cannot encrypt or lock your digital files. That's interesting. First of all, pimping in LibPair would not be a crime, although I don't think you'd need a pimp as much. I think hoes would be able to be their own pimps more. But it's interesting that they made a condition of this guy's parole that he can't lock his digital files, because really, I think that's something that they want to institute on everybody. I was thinking the other day, I was shredding something that I didn't want anyone to see on my crosscut shredder, and I was thinking, okay, you see all these ads for like LifeLock on TV, and we'll protect your identity from theft, and we'll provide you with a free crosscut shredder when you sign up. And the government says they're really concerned about identity theft, this and that. Now, if everybody used encryption, identity theft would be f***ing impossible. But the feds don't want you to use encryption.
No.
If you go to the FBI website and read about cybercrime, they'll tell you, make sure you shred your receipts, make sure you use a complicated password, etc. But they don't want you to do it to a point where they couldn't get to your identity and mess with it.
They want you to report your neighbor if your neighbor says he uses encryption. They want you to report it to Homeland Security.
But really, like, the thing is, encryption isn't that hard to use. You know, you can get email suites that automatically encrypt your emails. The problem is there's not a huge user base. You know, I'm an anarchist, and I tried to use email encryption even just to send, you know, stuff I wouldn't care if someone read, you know, talk about the weather, just to test it. And I could only find 2 people who were willing to do it. And it got to the point of, like, I quit doing it because
on the other end, it requires more work. And in our fast-paced digital world...
Yeah, but it really doesn't. It basically requires, like, if you set it up right, it requires 1 click. But, you know, why doesn't LifeLock offer that and get everyone to use it? Because the government wouldn't let them, or they'd stop them in some way, probably.
Yeah.
Even though encryption's legal. When it first came out, strong encryption was illegal to export because it was considered a munition by the United States government.
Huh.
But that's been changed now. I think part of the reason it's changed is because they're getting to the point where they're going to be able to crack it no matter what. But
Right. Well, the thing is, we're not constitution humpers, but if you are of that persuasion, just think about how anti-Fifth Amendment it was for the court to say something like, as part of your parole, you can't encrypt your files. That's like saying, if we're going to let you out of prison, you're not allowed to have part of the Bill of Rights.
Well, that's pretty common way before.
Yeah, I guess they can
computers.
take out the Second Amendment.
Anybody
too,
on parole can have their house searched at any time.
Yeah. So I guess
Or
that all gets
probation.
thrown out the window.
Yeah.
So, still, at any rate, this guy, I mean, he wasn't up on charges of hurting anybody. He was running a business. And the funny thing is he encrypted his phone anyway using just that Android thing where you have to draw the pattern on with the touchscreen, and the feds can't crack it. They, according to the article, they were still unable to do that, and they suspect that he's running the pimping business from home, even though he's on like house arrest or something.
Yeah, and they had to go to Google to have Google break in through the back door.
Yeah, which F that, man. That's so square. Plus, one of the things that I thought was really funny, and this isn't related one way or the other to freedom, but the name of the guy's business enterprise was Pimpin' Hose Daily, otherwise known as PhD. So.
PhD. He's got a PhD in hoology.
Yes.
Pimpology.
So, all around good guy. At least he's got a sense of humor. I mean, I don't know if he's a good guy, but according to this article, it doesn't say that he's a bad guy, other than that he was Pimpin' Hose Daily.
It doesn't say he was beating them or coercing them. He was just providing a service, managing them.
Yeah. Stossel actually did a great bit on prostitution back when he was on, before he had his own show. I think it was just like a special on Fox News, the regular one, not Fox News Business, where he was talking about prostitution. And he was so great because he took this normal news package that some like local affiliate did, and he just sort of ripped it to shreds. He was saying, you know, why do people act like these women are such victims? You know, they were wanting to do it because he was interviewing these women from the Bunny Ranch who were just saying, you know, this is what we want to do with our lives. Like, I went to college and I started working at such and such job and it was lame, so I decided I'd rather live the life of a high dollar whore. And in this news package, it shows the lady, and she was like doing a stand-up talking about how, well, now that these women are in jail, this is probably the safest night they've spent all year. And Stossel was like, really? In jail? That's better than doing your own voluntary action and
if they were working in a house and not street walking, that's completely specious.
Yeah. Well, I think it's specious anyway. And then it's
specious even if what the person said is technically true. It's specious because it's saying we have to throw you in a cage to protect you from yourself, from doing what you do voluntarily.
Yeah. Well, think about the mental disconnect with the causality, because if that is true, you're right. Say these prostitutes are in a horrible situation, but they're only in a horrible situation because of the criminality of it. Not the immorality of it, but because they have to do this on the black market, on the underground, in the dangerous parts of town, because the government forced them to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend who was a prostitute when she was a junkie, who worked a really bad neighborhood, Cap Street in 15th in San Francisco, and she once got kidnapped by a van of 6 guys who raped the shit out of her and beat her up and then dumped her for near dead on the sidewalk the next morning. But if prostitution were legal, and in places where it is, that doesn't happen. You know, at the Bunny Ranch, if someone comes in and is being aggressive to the women, they detain him and call the cops.
Yeah. Strip clubs, too. I mean, no touching. That rule's pretty much enforced by the bouncers, and well. Hooters girls. I mean, how often do you hear about Hooters girls being kidnapped and murdered or raped or whatever? It doesn't happen. I mean, maybe it happens, but, I mean, if the government didn't treat it like it is and give it this special status, then being a hooker would be no different than being a Hooters girl or being a model.
They love Stossel on Fox News because Bill O'Reilly gets to make fun of his libertarianism. He does. The thing is,
Bill O'Reilly never makes an argument. He goes, I don't buy it.
He basically says, well, fuck you and your libertarianism.
Pretty much. He says, well, I think we should just kill all the drug dealers.
Yep.
And shit.
All right, man. Let's take a break.
Go Freedom Fiends.
Freedom Fiends, helping the helpless. Freedom Fiends, saving the universe. Freedom Fiends, doing the things that I say.
Taking the world from the state, fighting the forces of hate.
Freedom Fiends, helping the helpless. Freedom Fiends, kicking the hornet's nest. Freedom Fiends, doing the things that I do.
Keeping the tasers away, you should be free, not a slave.
Freedom Fiends, helping the helpless. Freedom Fiends, saving the universe. Freedom Fiends, doing the things that I do.
Drugs a pepper spray, the veterans will torture you, but you'll hear the truth today. Yeah, we will not force you to. Stopping the cops on the block for the fiends on the clock. Ain't never gonna stop and the glass go blow.
So, speaking of bad smells in D.C., an interesting thing I learned that makes sense, but I'd never learned it before this week, was that the 10th Amendment of the United States, which gives states sovereignty over the federal government, allegedly, does not apply to Washington, D.C., because it's not a state.
Ah, yeah. That makes sense. Didn't they have don't they not have a congressman either? And there was a big hubbub about them trying to get some kind of representation in Congress as well.
I thought they have there's a few places that have congressmen that can't vote.
Right. They have a delegate, but not a
DC's
non-voting
one,
member.
Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. You know, I forgot to mention when we were talking about Whore Island, blah, 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 and then said something about the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands is Whore Island, by the way.
So it's the Virgin Islands is the opposite of what it really is then.
It's whore. I didn't even think of that. That's funny. Virgin whore.
Virgin whore.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
that's what I want when I die. I want 70 whore virgins.
2 whores for you only.
Yes.
Cool. How's your wife feel about that?
I don't know. I'll just say I hope they're all clones of you, and that'll get me past that.
My wife and I have actually discussed of what we would do if one of us died, and our consensus is basically, we'd probably both find somebody else to touch our parts and do our laundry.
Touch our parts and do our laundry. That's what it boils down to, huh?
and have good conversation, but we're never going to marry again. We're the one for each other. We totally feel that and believe it. And, she'd probably take a year or two to find somebody. I'd probably take a month or two or a week or two.
A week or two. How did she react when you said that?
At my age, though, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
You know, when people in their late 40s die, become single because they're widows or widowers.
They act like teenagers, man. I've dealt with that.
I wouldn't,
extensively.
man. I would be so distraught. She's my life partner. She's my helpmeet. She's my best friend.
Yeah.
I literally, we've been together coming up on 7 years, and literally every night she comes home from work, I am happy to see her, and she's happy to see me, which is more than I can say for a lot of marriages that in my family and in friends that I've had.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
Me and my wife are mostly like that, but sometimes I'm like working on something, and I know that I won't be able to work after she gets home, so I'm kind of like, oh, okay, gotta finish.
Yeah, I'm allowed to work when she's here.
I'm allowed to work when my wife's home. It's just, when she first comes home, we have to spend, some us time.
Well, I really think that that's a function of being young and being recently married, because we were kind of like that when we first got married. I mean, it was never a case of like, stop working. It was more like, oh, I must spend time with you. But I think it's kind of a feeling of like, this could end. And, after you've been together a bunch of years, if it's still good, when it's still good, you kind of know you're going to be together the rest of your life, and there's no hurry.
Right, no hurry.
You know, a lot of the best times that DJ and I spend where we're both happiest, we're in the same room and not talking to each other. I'm working on the computer and she's reading a book.
Yeah.
That's a perfect Saturday afternoon for us. You know?
Totally.
But also some of my work involves my wife. She does a lot of voiceover for us, and she also proofreads a lot of stuff I do. She's actually proofreading my blog right now because she's usually incredibly busy at work, but the last couple days she's been playing solitaire at work. Actually, yesterday she was 40. She comes home usually she leaves by 6, and I looked at the clock yesterday. It was 6:48, and I called her, and I'm like, "Are you having to work late? Are you busy?" And she's like, "Oh my God, what time is it?" No, I was playing solitaire at work late.
Sounds like a government job.
No, it's not.
I know.
It's very much not. It's actually, I wouldn't say fighting the government, but a lot of what they do, it's a law firm, and a lot of what they do is protect people who've been arrested for nanny laws.
Yeah. Which is good. It's good that she's on that end of fighting the good fight at times.
Yeah. Actually, when we first moved here, she applied for a job with the DA here, and because it was the only thing that was available, and she needed a job, and she did not get it, and we were really happy, and she kind of thought she didn't get it because they were like threatened by her knowledge.
Huh? How so?
DJ's a paralegal, but she's as smart as a lawyer and knows as much about law as a lot of lawyers. And I don't think they want.
She would notice their seediness.
I don't know. I don't want to say that or even go there. I don't know.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about that DA in particular. I'm just thinking I don't imagine most DAs would want a paralegal that are as smart or smarter and more knowledgeable than the lawyer, the DA they're working for.
So now DA, by that you mean basically the prosecutor, right? The prosecuting attorney? Okay. Yeah, because I thought that's what they called them in Wyoming. That's what they call them here too, where I'm at now.
Isn't that what they're called everywhere?
Yeah. But I generally call them prosecuting.
Well, this was the DA, not a DA, which is called an ADA, which is assistant district attorney, which are all the lawyers. And in this area, there aren't a lot of them.
Right.
It's like in New York City, there's the DA, and then there's probably 1,000 ADAs. In New York or Los Angeles. Here, I think there's the DA and like 4 ADAs.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad she didn't get that job and she got a better job. Because those guys are slimy, man. Our prosecuting attorney over here, I think he was the first person I ever interviewed when I was at my TV job here. And it was a story about drug court. And I wasn't writing it, so I was following along. But because I was training, the person let me ask the questions. And it was about drug court. So the story was... yay, they got more funding for the drug court. And I think it wasn't my first question, because I always ask these kind of questions after I've got the soundbite, but I asked him, why should drugs be illegal anyway? And he gave me the dirtiest look, and he gave me some rote statist answer like it hurts families or something like that. And he never liked me after that. Hurts families. So does throwing people in a cage for a non-violent thing. Yeah, exactly. That's what really hurts families, And everybody's seen it, and they have no plausible deniability there, because everybody who works in that industry sees how horrible it is when you steal somebody's kids, you throw them in jail, you make it to where they can't get a job because they have to check the felon box whenever they apply. You steal their house, you steal their car. Yeah, that's what really ruins their families, but somehow they have this double think in their head where they're absolved of all the guilt because these people broke the law, and it wasn't really me that broke up their family, it was the meth. No, that. That's the end of my rant on prosecuting attorneys. I don't want to get into it because I get angry. An interesting thing about Wyoming, in this county, Natrona, which is, tied for the biggest county, most populous county in the state. Yeah. There are very few trials by jury here. There's about one a month. Isn't that sort of been the trend nationally, too? Isn't there some stat like more than, like less than 1% of all trials or all convictions end up coming out of plea bargains and settlements? I don't know if it's that low, but it is getting
a higher percentage of where they just pile on these, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life for doing nothing, different charges, and then say, say you're going to go to prison for 20 years. Unless you sign this piece of paper and we skip the trial, you'll get 4 years, and you might be out in good behavior in 2.5.
Yeah. And people tend to do it because, I mean, that's a huge risk, and you can't really count on a jury anymore to really be on the side of freedom these days. You can pretty much count on a jury to believe what the prosecutor says, to believe what the cops say, and to generally vote like statists. And I think part of that is obviously the jury selection, where they
in voir dire, they get the people that they think are going to be on their sides, but the attorney protecting the accused also has some say in voir dire.
That's true. Yeah. So
probably not so much at the federal level. Another thing about federal prosecutions, a lot of times the feds won't even touch something. The feds don't take things unless they are sure they can win, or 90% sure they can win. States will take things. States will prosecute anything a lot of the times. But an interesting thing I heard about banning and the problems with banning backfiring. WikiLeaks is considered such a threat to the federal government that they've installed filtering software on all federal government computers that won't let anything through about WikiLeaks. The federal attorneys prosecuting Bradley Manning, the alleged WikiLeaker who leaked the things to WikiLeaks, they missed some court dates or some filing dates because they were getting emails from the judge about the WikiLeaks case, and it went into their trash folder.
I love that. Yeah, shooting themselves in the foot. Their own banning is preventing their own tyranny. I love the irony.
That's pretty funny, man.
Well, I mean, after the big controversy first started, weren't there certain departments they weren't blocking them with software yet, but they were warning their employees not to do it, not to read anything about it,
not to read anything about it. Yep. So, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Sweden moving towards a cashless economy? There's many places in Sweden now where you cannot use money, and it's something like 1% of transactions in Sweden are done with cash as opposed to 7% in the United States. Now, I was surprised that it was so low in the United States because I still see people use cash all the time.
Of course, you're in Wyoming.
But it's also probably a factor, the average is influenced by most really large money transactions now are done cashless.
That's true. Yeah, you don't pay your rent with cash.
Like buying a house.
Right,
yeah.
Right. You don't
or
don't
buying
buy
a house or,
cash.
Paying out dividends or something. But yeah, Wyoming people still use cash a lot. We don't use cash very often. I don't even own any cash. I have a debit card. I don't even have a credit card. I have a debit card, and that's it.
Yeah. I carry a little bit of cash on me. Also, I think your profession really depends on what you use cash. A lot of business owners, like my dad, he always has a bunch of cash with him just because that's part of how he pays himself. He just, instead of putting it through the books, he'll take some of the cash out.
Wait, are you saying something I should edit out here?
No, I mean, he drops off the money at the bank and he takes what's...
he pays taxes on it.
He takes what's his.
Just he runs a cash business.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. People who run cash businesses, they have cash. When I used to deliver pizzas, I wouldn't put all my cash in the bank. I'd keep it on me and keep a big stack of it. And whenever I had to pay for anything, I'd pay it with cash.
You're listening to the Freedom Fiends podcast, available from freedomfiends.com. That's FreedomFeens.com.
And part of the thing about this article that you linked to me about Sweden becoming a cashless society was there were people saying, A, this is a good thing because it'll keep black market activity from happening, and B, the way they termed people escaping taxes like it was a bad thing. Like, a lot of people pay themselves in cash for under-the-table deals, and they use it basically as a loophole. And, of course, I hate that innate sense that it's somehow cheating or somehow wrong to avoid paying taxes.
It's part of the square horizontal enforcement. Right. I saw some square horizontal enforcement that was mind-blowing, but fortunately, the comments just all shredded it pretty much. It was on Yahoo News, and it was called an article called "Ron Paul Keeps Losing, but His Pointless Campaign Rolls On."
Yeah, that was so square. And pointless to who? And the bad Quaker, Ben Stone, he did pretty much a whole cast on this saying, it's all in how you look at it. If you look at the Ron Paul campaign as, basically a giant speaking tour for liberty and getting the ideas out, it's been one of the most successful ever.
Yeah, I mean, I saw one night when Ron Paul was giving a speech after losing a state, which I don't think is even losing, but, was giving a rah-rah rally speech to his supporters that was really energetic. And it was carried on Fox and CNN at the same time for like 15 minutes. I mean, when in your lifetime before Ron Paul have you seen someone get to talk about Austrian economics for 15 minutes on two of the three major networks, or, two of the four major networks for 15 minutes in prime time in the, 7 p.m. prime time.
Exactly. I mean, that if that was the only thing that happened in the campaign, it would be a huge victory. He was talking about ending the war, ending the drug war, and this was all live. It was after the Iowa caucuses. This was after he came in third place, and he had his big speech. And, I mean, I didn't watch TV, but according to you, they were carrying it and playing like the whole thing. I watched the speech. I didn't see it on TV, but I mean, if you were sitting at home and not a Ron Paul supporter and you saw that, I could see a lot of people being converted, or at least starting to open up their minds a little bit.
And it's amazing that he speaks so much truth and all other politicians lie every time they open their mouths. And the mainstream media paints him as, look at this crazy nut.
Yeah. It's because they're crazy. It's like that cast we did where we seem crazy because we're the sane ones in a crazy world.
Yep. I had an interesting exchange on Facebook with someone who's my friend on there, but doesn't know the cast and doesn't know our media. And I was talking about, there's this painter, I forget his name, but he's getting really popular. Maybe I'll use his image for our podcast. I don't know. He seems like someone who'd go after copyrights, but he's this guy who's painting all these anti-Obama paintings. He's a really good painter, and he painted this picture of Obama like looking into your face, holding up the Constitution, and the Constitution's on fire. And my comment was, I'd like to, and I posted this on the artist site and then posted that I'd posted it on my wall. And I said, great, your art is great. I really like it. But I'd love to see one also of Bush burning the Constitution. And some young guy, newly minted anarchist, took me to task for it and started arguing with me about, well, the Constitution is what gives them the right to steal all this. And I'm like, look, calm down, kid.
Right.
I'm a full-on anarchist. You don't know my stuff like most of my friends on here do. I was just feeding, baby spoonfuls to a statist, trying to get him to look in this direction.
Baby spoonfuls, and this kid, I like that. Yeah, that's good.
And it was like, this kid had just come on full force, like, I guess he started listening to Stefan Molyneux last week and decided to school me or something. It was kind of funny.
Yeah. At the same time, we've got some good horizontal liberation from our listeners. We had a guy write us to talk back, not necessarily taking us to task, but pointing something out. He says that we might want to stop using the term "my taxes" when we're talking about taxes, because it's not my taxes; it's their taxes they're imposing on me. It's my money that they're stealing.
I mean, we get taken to task for that a lot, and for saying similar things, for saying "us" when we talk about. The U.S. invading another country. I actually sort of auto-corrected earlier in the cast. I said something about us.
Yep, and I did that a few casts ago too, where I sort of stopped myself just because you're so used to saying it, and that's how everybody else says it. So it's easy to fall into that sort of pitfall. I
think I appreciate people telling us that, but I think you can stop. because we do acknowledge it. It's just such an ingrained habit, and we're working it out of us. You know, in our hearts, we've definitely worked it out of us, but it just still comes out as language. And if you don't like it, start your own podcast. I have a lot of blog posts on how to do what we do. Yeah. So there.
Oh well, this guy loves it. He said he loves the cast.
I know. But I'm just sick of getting that email, really, from different people. Of
right.
You said we invaded Iraq. We didn't invade Iraq. They did with our money. And I'm like, duh. Listen to the past 58 casts, and you'll know that I know that in my heart of hearts.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, we like the feedback. We just it's interesting when you run a business like this, and I had the same experience with my book on filmmaking. It's like people who don't know my whole catalog coming in after seeing one tiny part of my catalog and saying, this point is wrong in your catalog. And I'm like, yeah, you don't see the whole picture. But how could they possibly? I mean, people are new to it, and we welcome the feedback. What I say is call in on the live show on Sundays, and we'll discuss it on there.
There you go. Yeah, because we have that now. So now not only can you email us to talk back, but call us up, and if you feel like pointing something out, definitely do it. That's what the call-in show is for.
I will say again that if you call into the call-in show, you are being broadcast, recorded, and being recorded during the commercials.
Yeah, definitely. So just keep that in mind.
So I've been having this fantasy recently. I'm going to wrap up with this.
All right.
It's kind of something that keeps me going. It's a fantasy. Yes, it's a libertarian with a fantasy that keeps him going.
Libfair.
That's a libfair. Yeah. Not to be confused with Liz Fair. So I don't know what happens after you die. I'm a deist, which basically means I think there's a creator, but I don't think it intervenes on a day-to-day basis. And I've always been a non-believer in reincarnation. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm Western. Maybe it's because hippies believe in that without having any reason to. And they use the word karma when they really should be using the word dharma because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. But I was thinking, if you looked at the universe from a scientific viewpoint of no energy is destroyed, it only changes form, reincarnation kind of would make sense. So I'm not going to completely dismiss the possibility, and I've actually been entertaining the possibility of what if it's possible and what if it's true, and that's what happens when you die. And I kind of have this fantasy of when I die and I'm reincarnated and the world is whatever state it is, probably at that point it'll be some kind of brave new world tyranny, soft tyranny. I have this fantasy of my reincarnated soul in the other person, getting to the age of 12, 13, 14, 15, and somehow finding the freedom fiends.
And being a fan of yourself.
Yeah, without knowing it. But
nice.
Maybe what's keeping me going this week is I'm making this for my soul in another person 60 years from now.
Excellent. Well, I mean, in a sense, we are doing this for posterity as well. We want the ideas to stick and to stick around, and hopefully we won't ever be in some kind of brave new world, but
we do want everyone to download and save all our casts and repost them and archive them. And if anything ever happens to Neema and I, either we're thrown in prison or droned, or the website is taken down by something like SOPA, or just we get tired of it and move on and do something else, we would like other people to repost these casts on their blogs, on their podcasts, on radio, on YouTube, on shortwave radio, on USB drives sent through carrier pigeon, burned to CDs and passed to friends. Mm-hmm. We'd love it. So feel free to start doing that now. And
on little SD drives in a PVC pipe and buried underground.
Yeah. And you might want to make a little get a solar powered unit for your player. So when they decide the only way to cut off the internet is by killing the power, you can still listen to them.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. Like people who know the science and, engineers have basically said the only way to cut off the internet is to cut off all the power. Kind of scary thought.
That is a scary thought. I guess theoretically they could try to monopolize it and be like, oh, well, only our military outposts and FEMA camps will have power, and we'll just cut off the grid to everybody else.
Oh, I'm sure they wouldn't cut off the...
they wouldn't cut off their own power.
Switch. They wouldn't cut off the switch to the war machine.
Right,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, or they might make it like Iraq, where you have 4 hours of power a day, so you can't get too strong and play your heavy metal music too loud. Or get too good at it.
They want to do evil things, I'm sure, but the minute everybody or enough people wake up and just say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to pay these guys anymore.
I mean, I hope, even though it's America and you don't get shot for speaking your mind very often here, I hope that somebody is inspired by us just existing as the Freedom Fiends the same way that we were inspired by a heavy metal band existing in Iraq.
Yeah.
You know, I had friends, this band in San Francisco called Life After Life, who moved to San Francisco from Czechoslovakia for the revolution, who were like, you know, they played in a good time rock and roll band. It was not a political band. You know, they had accordions and stuff and electric guitars and were kind of folky. You know, they got beaten in a police station for being in a band at one point. So, celebrate freedom. Share the Fiends. Tune in for our Sunday show. And, Worms.
Peace.
Hello, Freedom Fiends. It's your boy Dean from the U.S. Get the U.S. out my bloodstream. I own me and that include endorphins. No one won't ask permission and I won't say please. Freedom fans, one fact that I gotta make clear.
The Freedom Fiends podcast is covered by a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 license. Do what you want with it and spread it around. Tell 2 friends. Make copies. Email it to everyone you know. Go on the site and comment. This is a conversation. Every week, we'll have an exciting new episode where Michael W. Dean and Neema Vedadi weave their own unique take on the way the world works and how to find your place in it. Available from freedomfeens.com. That's FREEDOMFEENS.com.
Freedom Fiends is proudly syndicated by Alterati.com and the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Subscribe and tell 2 friends.
And remember, the only power they have is the power you allow them.